There are ideas that sound impossible that when you first hear them. Ideas that feel too strange, too unrealistic to ever become true. But sometimes, those ideas are not wrong. They are just early, because the future doesn't arrive all at once. It begins in the mind of someone who sees it before anyone else. This is Forgotten Minds, where we bring lost stories into the light. And this is the story of a man who described the modern world long before it existed. He wasn't born into fame. He didn't grow up surrounded by technology. He was born on July 21st, 1911, in Edmonton, in Canada. A quiet beginning, far from the digital world. He would one day describe. He studied literature, words, language, because for him, communication was everything. Not just what we say, but how we say it, and how it shapes the way we think. He moved from Canada to the United States, continuing his studies, exploring ideas that most people weren't even asking, because while others focused on content, he focused on the medium, the channel, the system through which information travels. And then he said something that confused almost everyone. The medium is the message. At first, it didn't make sense. People thought it was abstract, complicated, even meaningless. But what he meant was something deeper. That the way information is delivered changes how we understand it, changes how we think, changes how we live. He wasn't just studying media, he was predicting its impact, and what he saw was a future no one else could fully imagine. A world where technology connects everyone, instantly. A global village, where distance no longer matters, where information travels faster than ever before, where people are constantly connected, constantly influenced, constantly shaped by the media around them. At the time, this sounded unrealistic, because there was no internet, no smartphones, no social media, just television, radio, print. And yet, he described a world that looks exactly like ours today. But instead of recognition, he faced confusion, criticism, dismissal, because his ideas were too different, too abstract, too far ahead of what people were ready to accept. He didn't fit into categories, not a traditional scientist, not a typical academic. And when someone doesn't fit, they are often pushed aside, labeled, misunderstood. He continued speaking, writing, explaining, trying to make people see what was coming. But it's hard to convince the present about the future. Over time, his influence grew, quietly, among thinkers, among those who started to understand what he was saying. But mainstream recognition never fully matched his vision, because by the time the world began to look like what he described, his ideas were no longer seen as predictions. They were reality, and reality doesn't always credit the one who saw it first. He spent his life explaining a future people didn't yet live in, and in 1980, he passed away before seeing just how accurate his vision had been. Before the internet, before the digital age fully emerged. Think about it. How many people have seen the future only to be ignored in the present? How many ideas are dismissed simply because they arrive too soon? He didn't invent technology. He understood it. Before it even existed, he saw how it would shape humanity, how it would connect us and divide us, how it would change, not just what we know, but how we think. And today, we live inside the world he described, connected, influenced, surrounded by media. And yet, most people don't know his name, because sometimes the people who predict the future are not the ones the future remembers. His name was Marshall McLuhan. If this story made you think, if it made you question, if it made you see the world differently, then you already understand why stories like this matter. This is Forgotten Minds, not just history, but voices that were silenced. Join us, subscribe, and keep these stories alive. Sources are in the first comment, because some truths were buried, but not lost.